before we can really get started on any unit of geometry, we need to know the right terminology. When we look at this, or this, or this, or this, or this, we need to know what to call it. Because I don't want to say the blue one or the green one or the gray one, right? I need to get some precise mathematical vocabulary. Now, here's me in second grade. When I was in second grade, I would call the blue one a square, and I would call the yellow one a triangle, and I would call these gray ones stars or diamonds. But I would be pretty confused at this green one. I would probably call it a squished rectangle. But now that I'm older and more wiser, I need to use the right words, and I'm going to teach you those right words today. When we look at triangles, for example, we could talk about equilateral triangle, scalene triangle, acute, obtuse. There's lots of ways to talk about triangles. And in fact, there's lots of ways to talk about squares. Now, as a second grader, I would say that this green square was a diamond, simply because it's turned sideways. But now that I'm older, I realize I could turn any shape any direction I want. So this green one is also a square, and it's also a parallelogram, it's also a quadrilateral, it's also a polygon. Lots of different words for it. And we're going to be looking at different kinds of quadrilaterals today. All of the shapes you see on your screen right now are polygons because they are two-dimensional. And later on, we're going to be learning about three-dimensional shapes like polyhedron. But today, we're just going to be focusing on these rows of quadrilaterals. So say goodbye to those. And let's start talking about quadrilaterals. Now, I'm leaving the triangles here for a second because I could put two triangles together to make a quadrilateral, but that's not in this video. Let's just name the quadrilaterals what they're called. Let's start with the top. On the top, we have a rhombus. Now, the definition of a rhombus is that all four sides are equal. They don't have to make perpendicular corners there, but all four sides are equal. So I usually call a rhombus a squished square. This next one here is called a trapezoid. A trapezoid has two sides that are perfectly parallel to each other, but only two sides. The way I remember a trapezoid is it makes me think of a trap. In my neighborhood, there's lots of stray cats, so I always have to go to the SPCA and get one of these cat traps, which means one side leans in and traps the cat. This shape here is called a parallelogram. A parallelogram has four sides, which makes it a quadrilateral. So on this parallelogram, all four sides have a parallel buddy. On a trapezoid, only two sides are parallel, but on the parallelogram, all four of them are. And kind of the way I remember that is from my Spanish classes. In Spanish, para means four. I know it doesn't translate as para as cuatro, like that's two different words. But in English, four and four kind of just makes me remember. So if you want to remember that para means four, it can help you remember that a parallelogram has four. And then we're entered into this weird world of rectangles and squares. So let me take a minute to talk about the difference between a rectangle and a square. For parallelograms, when we're talking about rectangles and squares, I usually see these two things. And my second grade self would say, this one is a square and this one is a rectangle. And a square is not a rectangle and a rectangle is not a square. But my second grade self is wrong. A rectangle simply means a shape with four sides and all the sides are perpendicular, which means this polygon is also a rectangle because it has four sides and all sides are perpendicular. The more precise name for it is a square because a square means four sides, all sides are perpendicular, and all sides are equal. Knowing that definition, I know that every single square is also a rectangle, but every rectangle is not a square. I know that's a weird concept to try to think of because your second grade self goes rectangle, square. But now that we know the precise mathematical definition of a rectangle and a square, we now can deduce that every single square is a rectangle, but every single rectangle is not a square. So let's just practice with some true or false. And you just answer whether you think it's true or false. Yep, true. Yep, true. And that bottom one, you can hope it's false, but it's actually true. All right, you're going to put your answers to whether they're true or false on the Google form that goes with this video. And that's it. This is just a quick review on the right vocabulary to use before we really get into this geometry. I don't want you using words like shape. I want you using the precise words like polygons.